I was doing volunteer work with a program for young African-American males. And every Saturday I was the person that would, figure out what we were going to do with them, workshop, all that, recreation, everything. I was like the program director. And this one of our members who was a retired teacher, he came up to me and he said, "What do you do for a living?" At that time, I'm with Michelin. So, I kind of said, well, I'm a sales rep with Michelin Tire. I tried to sound like I was so proud, and I was. And he looked at me and he said, "That's a shame." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You totally missed your calling." He said, "I watch you with these young men every Saturday, and I watch how you inspire them, and I watch how excited you are." And he said, "You should be doing this every day." And I thought, oh my gosh, he is so right.
Hello, Loren.
Hi, Kelsey.
How are you doing today?
I am fantastic. It's a Friday. This won't come out on a Friday, but it's a Friday, so that's an accomplishment every week.
It really is, especially right now. I feel like each day we're just all doing the best we can right now.
Yes. And I know we've both been so busy, but today was fun, and it was a nice little retreat from a busy week.
It was. So tell our listeners who our guest is today.
Yeah, Dr. Martino Harmon, who is the Vice President for Student Life at a really big and notable place called the University of Michigan. He's been there since, as listeners were here, the middle of COVID. He joined the place, this big notable place, in the middle of COVID. He has over 24 departments. There are over 50,000 students now at the University of Michigan. So a very, very big job. He joined from Iowa State University, where he was the Vice President for Student Affairs, and had spent quite a number of years prior to that at community colleges, Cincinnati State Technical College, Rhodes State College, Washtenaw Community College. And I'm not going to spoil the episode, but folks should listen for what he did even before that, because that's kind of interesting, don't you think?
I do think. And I think the lessons that he learned from his career prior to higher education really translate to his role now. And thinking about, he talked a lot about, we're in this state of what's the return on investment of education, goals and metrics, and how are we thinking about that in a broader sense? I really think that was some good nuggets there.
Well, and I think many listeners know, and you know, of course, that I spent a long time working at the University of Michigan. I know a lot of people still who work there and think so highly of him, really respect his leadership. And I think all of that history, including prior to the community colleges I referenced, really has flavored how he leads, and has been and is, I think, instructive for our listeners and for me and for us. So I think it's fun to hear about that journey.
Agreed. And he made a comment that college was a fresh start for him. And I think it is for a lot of people, whether it's a fresh start, a restart, whatever kind of chapter start you look for. I think you're all in for a fun listen today. So shall we turn it over?
Let's do that.
Hi, Martino. We're really excited to have you today. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited for this opportunity, and I'm ready to have some fun.
So are we. So we're recording on a Friday, so it feels like a great way to end the week and give some people a little insight into who you are and where you've been and how you got to where you are. So one question we like to ask people to get started is, how do you describe what you do to a rideshare driver?
No one really understands what student life is. And they kind of understand vice president, but then they think there's only one vice president. So if the president gets sick, then I step in. So usually I have to clarify that that's not my role. But basically what I like to say is we have a lot of people, systems, departments that support students outside of the classroom, but we promote learning and engagement and student success. And I'm very fortunate to lead that team of many people that help support students. And That's probably the easiest way that I could describe it without getting real wonky with the rideshare driver who would then probably put me out of the car.
I have to say that for such a big place and a big job, that is the pithiest, most concise, but descriptive explanation I think maybe we've heard, Kelsey. That's fantastic. You are at a big place, and you do have a big role in all seriousness. But I know that's not where you started, right? Can you just tell us your journey? And I think I know that you didn't even start specifically in higher education, right? So tell us a little bit about your journey getting to this place.
Loren, I like to say that 40 years ago, when I started as an undergraduate student at the University of Toledo, if you showed me a crystal ball and you told me that 40 years from now, you will have a doctorate degree and you'll be the vice president of student life at the University of Michigan, first I would have said, what's student life? But then I would have taken this crystal ball and would have probably smashed it on the ground and say, you need to start over because the ball is broken. So I never, ever expected, as a student that started college, very unsure of my own future and not sure I'd make it through my second year. I never expected to be in a role like this. And of course, no one ever goes to college to work in student affairs because that was not on the list of majors. But as you said, my journey has been very non-traditional. I actually started college as an education major, and I let people talk me out of education because they said, you won't make any money. You'll be stuck in a classroom. You don't want to do that. And I was young and impressionable and said, yeah, you're right. So I switched to business. Made sense to me. My parents were entrepreneurs. I thought I could be a big shot CEO corporate person. And, that was a route that I took. But I soon realized after I graduated and got into corporate sales that it wasn't for me. And I don't mean that to disparage sales. I think it's a wonderful career. I learned a lot. I had a lot of skills that I developed during my 9 years in corporate America. But I just didn't feel like I was making a difference in the lives of others. And so it took me a long time, with family and raising kids, and it's hard to just quit a job track. But I finally made the move to higher education, and it was in admissions at my alma mater at the University of Toledo. And admissions seemed like a good transition because you travel, you're communicating with people, you're sort of selling the university, although we never like to use that word. So it was a real good transition into higher ed. And it had nothing to do with student affairs. It was about recruiting, but I really enjoyed the whole student experience. So I was dabbling and volunteering and, advising student groups and driving the van to retreats and speaking at events and going to orientation and helping out and just doing those things because I like that connection with the overall experience. And that eventually, the short version is that eventually sort of led me into other tracks. I spent 9 years in admissions, became director of admissions, was actually the first African-American director there. But then I was asked to start a retention program that focused on African-American students. The dropout rate at that institution at that time was very, very high. Half of the students that came as freshmen, African-American students, were gone by the second year. And so student leaders wanted something different. And the provost and the president asked me, because of my experiences, to step into that role to start this new tiny office with 2 people. And so that was, I would say, probably the most impactful work in my career because I was building something new that would really impact the lives of students and change their trajectory. And we had a lot of data that showed that. And so just moving quickly through after about 2.5 years, getting that off the ground, it was a 2-person office. I wanted to grow. So I stepped out of 4-year college and went into community colleges because I really liked that access student success mission. And my mother, although she didn't ever graduate from high school, later in life got a GED and spent a year attending Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland. And I saw the impact that made on her life. So I spent 6 years in a few different community colleges, growing, learning how to provide oversight for multiple units. And then I got an amazing opportunity at a place I never thought of at Iowa State University. And that's where I got back into 4-year became AVP, and then eventually the VP retired, and I became VP and had great years there, and then had the opportunity to come back closer to home at the University of Michigan. Long answer to your question.
No, that's great. Well, you were deep into a corporate career and made a shift, which takes a lot of courage, and we're all the beneficiaries. Yeah, wonderful.
And it came with a big salary cut too, by the way.
That's right.
Huge salary.
I'm sure it did. So my question is, first of all, what did you sell? And I feel like I have a need to know.
What didn't I sell, Kelsey? I spent the year selling postage meters with Pitney Bowes. That was, different.
Okay.
Back when there was mail.
Right, exactly, right. The little indicia thingy. And it was all the corporations. I was doing a lot of cold calling. I then left, and then I went to Glidden Paint. So I was selling paint. Mm-hmm. So that was, in a branch. That was called a branch management. And then I left and went to Michelin, the tire company, and I spent 6 years there. So most of my time was with Michelin, and 4 of those 6 years, I sold truck tires, not just tires, but truck tires. And that was really different, educational, very technical. And then they moved me to the travel publications division, where I had a bigger territory. I had the whole East Coast, but I went to bookstores and sold travel guides. So, like I said, what haven't I sold, Kelsey?
That's an amazing background. What do you think is a lesson that you learned from those years in selling that you translate to your work now?
There were 2 real important lessons that I think about every day. One, to be nimble, because when you're in sales, you could have a plan, and when you are walking the door, your plan might have to change 180 degrees. You may have to pivot. And that even when I went into admissions, I might plan to go to a high school and talk to a group of 8 students, which is what happened the year before. And I might walk in and they'll say, we've got 100 students in a auditorium and our period is shortened. So you've got 12 minutes to talk about the university. So that ability to sort of pivot on a dime and to not be flustered and to just sort of be grounded in what you were talking about was really important. And I think the other lesson I learned is to be centered on goals and metrics. Now, metrics and goals did not frighten me when I went into admissions, because I was used to that in sales. And that can be frightening if you haven't dealt with that. And even now, thinking about our return on investment and how do we demonstrate the impact and how do we turn that data into, cost analysis and how we can, generate more revenues based on retention. And so those 2 lessons never left me. And I think had I not had that experience, sure, I'd be okay, but it would be a lot tougher.
Do you think, Martino, there are things that higher ed leaders should learn from corporate America, if you will? And do you think there are things that corporation leaders, business leaders, really could and should learn from higher education that too often those things don't meet? What are your thoughts there?
I'll start with what higher ed leaders can learn from corporate America. I think one is, we can always, the industry today is pushing us to be more efficient and to show that we're efficient. We are, and effective. We're no longer in the time period where we can say, we do good things because they're good things. We have to demonstrate the impact, and I think the corporate world requires that, and to make decisions faster, and to be able to move things along a little bit quicker. That was a hard adjustment for me when I went from corporate to higher ed. I'm like, oh my gosh, it takes 40 people to make a decision. How do I navigate this? Conversely, though, I think corporations, and again, it's been a long time since I've been in the corporate world, but really just sort of understanding what motivates people at a deeper level. We were often told if you've got a great product and it's at the right price, people will buy what you're selling them, and if we're meeting a need. But I think understanding the person and understanding sort of at a deeper level what they are experiencing, what are the needs that may not be obvious to you. I think higher ed does a good job, especially in the student affairs world, of understanding the whole student experience and trying to match how we can provide the support based on what they need at a deeper level. I think corporate was very sort of, just basic level. We've got this product. What do you need? Here's a price. Buy it. And that, that leaves a lot on the table, I think.
I think that is a fantastic point. And really the conversation with any corporation that's trying to do business, especially with higher education institutions, right? So what's the value, what's the purpose, and what's the real partnership opportunity? It's not, to your point, there's not a product, a price, and we all move on. It is a partnership conversation of how those things move together.
Well, the other thing I would just add quickly, I believe now what's different than years ago is the use of technology, the use of systems, customer, I'm losing the word.
CRM.
CRMs. Mm-hmm. I think that is how corporations are able to understand the customer a little better now, which back in my day, I sound like grandpa in the chair, right? Back in my day, we didn't have that kind of technology to help us understand it. So I think corporations are further along, certainly now, than they were years ago.
So you mentioned being the first African-American in the role for admissions. What was that like to be the first in the role? And was that the only time that you were the first to serve in a role?
I would say that was probably the only time, only because I'll just talk about the bigger roles. The vice presidency roles in both cases at the University of Michigan and at Iowa State University, I've been fortunate to follow legendary African Americans that were in leadership roles at both institutions. But in admissions, it was definitely the first time. And I would just say in general, being an African American, and particularly an African American male in a major leadership role, there's some baggage that comes with that. Unfortunately, you always are sort of over preparing. You're always conscious of, and I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I would just say, if I'm talking to a group of my friends, this is what they would say. You're always really trying to be better than the best. Our parents always told us, you got to be better than everyone else because people will not judge you on the same standard. And whether that's true or not, that's sort of the baggage that you carry. So, there's sort of this awareness that, I'm not going to be perfect, but I better be really good because I might not get the grace that other people might get. And that drives you, but it's also not always healthy as well. You find yourself staying up too late at night, over preparing, worry too much about what you say and how you say it. And, if you bang your fist on the table, are you the angry black male, or are you just passionately making a point? So being first or not, that's something that is still with me today.
Yeah. Are there resources, people, networks? How do you kind of stay even with that pressure that comes with it?
Yeah, one of my areas of growth opportunity is in reading books, but I'm sure that there are a lot of resources, sort of, self-help kind of books that help you, corporate leadership, but I don't know that I've seen too much that specifically addresses, that issue. There may be a lot of dissertation research out there, but I haven't explored all that. But for me, it's really been people in my life that are mentors to me. So for example, the former vice president at Iowa State University is someone that I stay in contact with, and he was very intentional when he hired me about mentoring me so that I could succeed him. That was his goal. And so I even visited him this summer. He retired and lives in Dallas, and I was in Dallas for a conference, and I spent, a lot of time just talking to him about things. And so, that helps you to understand sort of the pressures, but also know that, you just do your best, and that's all you can do. That's all anybody can expect of you, is to do your best. And then one other thing I would mention is actually talking to people who consider me a mentor is sort of therapeutic. People that are up and coming in the field, and particularly African Americans or African American men, and I've been part of their dissertation research. That's why I know there's a lot of research out there. But just being able to talk to them about my experiences, it kind of helps to, sort of process a little bit what you're going through. And you're giving them advice, and then you try to live up to the advice you're giving them.
You mentioned mentors. We love talking about mentors. Kelsey and I do, and talking with guests about that. I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what are the characteristics, do you think, of good mentoring? When you are asked to be a mentor, what are the ways you enter that relationship that you think are helpful and instructive for others?
Loren, I actually believe this because I've been involved in mentorship programs. I've coordinated them. I think the best mentorship to me is sort of informal, maybe a little bit unstructured, and as needed. And what I mean by that is, I think sometimes, particularly with mentorship programs that involve students, when it's so structured and there's this pressure that, once every 2 weeks, you're going to check in and you're going to talk. And, I think that's hard. I think sometimes, even, when you're in a role like I'm in, it's sort of hard sometimes to maintain that. But I think when someone knows that you're there for them and you're available, and on the other side that you can reach out every now and then and just say, hey, how's it going? Or, hey, if you're not busy, maybe we can meet for lunch on Thursday. I think those situations work well. I would also say, too, good mentorship programs have a group sort of structure that's embedded. For example, here, the Blavens Scholarship Program, which is a program for students who have experienced foster care or homelessness. It's a wonderful program supported by donor Paul and Amy Blavin, their generosity. But that program has a mentorship component, which I just signed up for, but it also has a group structure to it. So there are opportunities, natural opportunities to make connections, but also I just think just having that informal, non-pressured, I have mentors that maybe I might only talk to once a year, and it's great, and I have mentors that I might check in with on Facebook, so I think you just have to go with what works for both parties.
Yeah, it seems like that balance is really important, because the highly structured ones, I've sometimes bristled at the forced mentoring, because some people are not equipped to be mentors, or the relationship, the best mentoring relationship when it's mutual. You're entering into a relationship with each other when it's great, a little bit even of vulnerability, which requires trust. And so, it's hard to find that balance sometimes, I think. Have you seen cases where, a highly structured forced does it work well when there's a forced sort of, if you will, forced matching? And how do you make that work?
I think, Loren, the only time that I've seen, and this is not a big sample size, the only time I've seen a highly structured mentorship program work well is when it has some group activities embedded. Because it's like, not like, we're going to all meet and you're going to be in a room and you're going to be face to face with your mentor. But it's, we had a tailgate last Saturday with the Blavin Scholars Program. Boy, what a fun way to catch up with your mentor and mentee, sort of catch up. So I think, and you could be something structured too. It could be a speaker, that you really want to go see, or, and so I think if it is a structured program, it needs to have a group sort of level of participation. So it's not all that pressure of, okay, I'm going to pick you up, at 9:00 a.m. and we're going to go to breakfast every month.
Yeah.
Sometimes that works well. I've seen that work very well, but I think for really busy people and some students that are just as busy as we are, I think having that sort of flexibility and formality and the group structure is the right mix.
I also hear you saying the individuality of the mentorship so funny how life works sometimes. I was on a call with an individual earlier today, and they were apologizing for not staying in touch as often. And I don't know what the metrics of as often meant to them. And it was the opportunity to give space to say, it's okay. Right. We don't have to talk every month or every 6 months or whatever that looks like. I'm here for you. You're here for me, whatever that looks like and whenever it is needed. Yes. And so I think giving space and creating those individual interactions is really where the magic is for both parties.
I bet you put that person at ease. They probably were coming into that conversation with a sense of guilt,
anxiety,
and you let them sort of breathe and say, oh, thank goodness Kelsey said that. So you are so right about that.
Yeah. Which is a real deposit in that relationship. You made a deposit in that.
And it's a deposit for me. Back to your point of like, that was also telling myself it's okay that whatever you might need or how you are working, because that pressure to just be everything for everyone feels like a lot sometimes.
Yes.
So letting that go is a goal. So Martino, you have a large department that you have responsibility for right now. How do you go about creating culture and setting a tone that kind of permeates throughout an organization of that size?
Yeah, it's something that I think is probably the greatest part of this position. It's the greatest opportunity. You can't, you realize when you get to this level, you can't be in everything. If you are, you will be unsuccessful, right? And so you have to trust and rely on people, but you have to send messages of vision. Where are we heading as an organization? What's really important in terms of our priorities? And it has to be a shared vision. You have to build that vision based on, really hearing from people and assessing the organization. And then in addition to that, you have to sort of live what you say. So, you can be present, but not totally in the mix. But when you're being present, in a way, you are really communicating the culture. You're sharing what you believe that culture should be. And so, coming into vice presidencies, following long-standing vice presidents. Now, at Iowa State, I was there for 2.5 years as AVP, so I had more of a chance to observe the culture. Here at Michigan, not only was I not here, but I started in July of 2020.
What was going on then?
Yeah, no big deal.
Right.
So it was summer. Is that what you're saying?
Learning the culture on the screen. Oh my goodness! How difficult was that? And I had to really take the approach that, hey, we're managing a pandemic right now. If you're worried about what organizational changes I'm going to be making in the next 6 months, forget about it. No one should be thinking that way right now. We just have to get through this. But after a year or so, I could start to see opportunities to maybe make some changes, but more important than that, to really share what I felt was important in terms of direction and vision for the organization. I will share with you that because we were all on Zoom, a great staff person who Loren knows, Anita Bone, who's our director of organizational development. I'm so fortunate. I've never had a person in that role before.
That's rare.
But because of that, Anita knew that I needed to get to know people because the search process was sort of closed, even though it was right before the pandemic. And so she had me create a PowerPoint about me. The most uncomfortable thing that I ever do is to talk about me, but she did that because it gave me a chance to sort of share who I am. And I had a couple slides on what my values are, and that was the first opportunity that I could share, 4 or 5 really important values to let people know how I operate, how I function. And Iowa State, people got a chance to observe that when I was AVP, but here they didn't get to, and then they didn't get to observe me, and we couldn't engage in person. So I think once you do that, you're sort of building that, and you're communicating that, but you have to learn the organization too at the same time. Last thing I'll mention, is we just rolled out our 3-year strategic plan that we've been working on for the last year and a half. And when I got to the point about our priorities, our 6 major priorities, I said, I don't want to read a slide. I don't want to read information. So we just put a picture up with the priority name. And my message was more of aspirationally. Well, first of all, why is this a priority? And then where will this priority lead us? I wanted to really give an aspirational message behind those priorities. And so that was really important. But that gave people a window inside of, where is he, what is he thinking about in terms of these priorities? I just spoke. And I think that that's helpful. You never know if you're really totally connecting, but you just do all you can and you hope that your senior leadership team, that you all are on the same page too, because, they can crush your vision if that group is not on the same page. And we are, thank goodness. So long answer.
I love that simple imagery because it allows lots of room for people to live into that versus it being really rigid, highly defined. On the other hand, you spoke earlier about the importance of metrics. And I'm curious, as you have set out the strategic plan, will you develop or have you developed also what it looks like once you've gotten there to this place?
Absolutely. Our student life research, we have a research a group which consists of 3 people, and they've been involved in the development of the priorities and the values, and the values from the standpoint of how are we living out those values in our behaviors. So they've been involved in that from day one. And what they will continue to do is look at how do our priorities match up with the impact that we want to make with students. And one of the staff members we just hired has an expertise in qualitative research. And the other portion of that is the qualitative research. So we will be developing those metrics, and that will let us know if we're achieving our goals. But then we also have priorities rather, that focus on staff. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with assessing the climate for staff and what are some of their needs that maybe we're not meeting. And then we'll be able to sort of gauge where we are from now, next year, and the years beyond. So the Student Life Research Group is sort of leading that metric development. And then it's up to us as leaders to follow that.
I love that. So we've talked a lot about the roles, the level of responsibility. Tell us what your life is like outside of work. What do you do for fun, family? Give us a little insight into that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find time for that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we need to have a different conversation then.
Yeah. No, Loren knows. I know for sure because he's been here. It is a real challenge, but knowing that I'm not getting any younger, and I think the pandemic sort of highlighted this, even though I was, starting down this path before the pandemic. But really, I love travel. I absolutely love travel. Even when I go to a conference, you're not on vacation, obviously, but just going to a different place, to a different city, it's fun. I enjoy that. It kind of takes me back to my admissions days and my sales days too. So I like travel, but what I haven't done, Kelsey, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, I've done like very little international travel, like very little. I'm talking like probably China, and that was a business trip years ago, and Canada.
I was going to say Canada. You have to have gone to Canada, right?
It's hard to even count Canada, even though it is international. But so that's one of my goals, is to do international travel. But other than that, I just enjoy simple things like movies. And I'm not a binge watcher with streaming. I love to go to the theater. And I do watch some of the streaming shows. But I also have 2 daughters, and my oldest daughter works in Hollywood. I think Loren knows this, works in Hollywood, and she works in post-production. And so following her career, and, certainly the movies are really important. And whenever we get together, that's like the first thing we do.
That must be fun.
Movies. She looks at a movie differently than we would, totally different. So I like spending time with my daughters. I have my other daughter, my youngest daughter. She actually works here at the University of Michigan. in the sustainability sustainability and environmental college. And so having her on campus, a few days a week is really nice. And she got married this summer. Love my son-in-law. He's awesome. And he just started here at the university in HR and central HR. So it's spending time with family is great. And just trying to do things that I enjoy. Sports, that's the other thing. I can't leave that out. I am an avid sports fan, and I'm from Cleveland. So we know how to suffer with our Cleveland teams. We know the pain.
Detroiters and Cleveland, yeah.
Yeah, Detroiters and Cleveland have that alike, right? So that for me is like, I'm going to the Michigan game tomorrow, and then I'm hopping in the car and I'm driving to Cleveland Saturday night. I'm going to the Browns game on Sunday. So I know Michigan will do
Browns.
well.
Yeah.
I know Michigan will do well, but I never know what will happen with the Browns.
Well,
Never.
And because I respect you, I'm not going to ask you what you wore for the Toledo, Michigan game. I'm just not going to ask you. You don't have to answer. No discrimination here.
You mean was the basketball game last year?
What didn't Michigan and Toledo? Yeah, was the football game?
No, they played bowling. Michigan played Bowling Green
Last week. Yeah, I was at the game. Yeah, but I thought it was Toledo last year too. No,
that was a few years ago. That was before I was here.
Yeah,
so the basketball game they played in the NIT tournament. So
that's right.
I'll be forthright. I had on a Michigan shirt and a Toledo ball cap.
Yeah, I get it. I'm a IU and Michigan guy, and I just can't watch. It's just two teams can't win. So yeah.
Right. Good question.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Earlier, Martino, you talked a little bit about when you were an undergraduate at the University of Toledo. You were, I think the words you used were, you were talked out of education and pursued a business career. I am wondering, what was that like for you, and how has that influenced the way you talk with students or maybe even staff even who are having a question about their career? Has that influenced and impacted you in any way?
Yes, and Loren, that's a great question. This is every chance that I get when I'm talking to students, particularly first-year students, I tell the story of following my passion. And there was a moment, like I always kind of knew, like, I probably am in the wrong career for me, and I need to make a shift at some point. I knew it, and I was exploring it. But what really pushed me, over the edge was there was a time period when I was with Michelin. I was living in New Jersey, in the southern part of New Jersey, near Philadelphia, and I was doing volunteer work with a program for young African-American males, teenagers. It was a Saturday enrichment program, total volunteer through my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. And every Saturday I was a person that would, figure out what we were going to do with them, workshop, all that, recreation, everything. I was like the program director, unpaid. And one of our members who was a retired teacher, educator, he came up to me, his name was Bill Tyler. I remember it like it was yesterday. And he said, "What do you do for a living?" At that time, I'm with Michelin. So, I kind of said, well, I'm a sales rep with Michelin Tire. I tried to sound like I was so proud, and I was. And he looked at me and he said, "That's a shame." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You totally missed your calling." He said, "I watch you with these young men every Saturday, and I watch how you inspire them, and I watch how excited you are." And he said, "You should be doing this every day with young people. This is what you should be doing." And I thought, oh my gosh, he is so right. And I couldn't go back to do secondary ed. I didn't do the whole student teaching, but that's what made me think about admissions and, and going back to higher education. And it was that affirmation that this is what I should be doing. And so I always tell students that, you may be in the perfect major, but maybe you're in a major that someone chose for you. And maybe you won't know for years until you work in the field, but don't be afraid. Once you get that first job, to figure out, is this the right place for me? And if you need to pivot to do something different, it's okay. That's what life is about. So that story was, it was really, great for me.
And we've all three of us have had staff, I'm sure, in our careers who were maybe having a moment of question about their careers. And of course, our roles are to encourage them and retain them. But there are times, I'm sure, for you where you've I mean, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I have felt sometimes, Martino, like I suspect they probably need to make a change, even though I want them to stay in this role or even in this university or division. How do you talk with, or how has that influenced you when you've talked with staff who are part of your team and are, maybe you can tell, struggling with the same questions, but you want to keep them,
Right, exactly. I'm not as probably intentional about this as I used to be, because the staff that report directly to me are at a higher level in their career. But when I was a director of admissions, for example, and I had a lot of staff that were, young professionals trying to figure it out, at least twice a year, I would meet with them and just say, tell me where you want to be. Even if it's not here, even if it's not in higher ed, tell me what you see yourself doing and how can I support you in that? And, and I said, and don't be afraid to say, like, I don't think I want to do this, for the next 2 or 3 years. And so those kind of conversations, and even now, though, at this level, talking to individuals, if I can see that they have the ability to do something different, if they could be a vice president somewhere else, I won't hesitate to say to them, I think you could be a vice president if you want to be. And if you want to do that, then let me know how I can support you in that endeavor.
You made this career change, Martino, from you were deeply embedded in a corporate career that was successful, and you made this pivot. What kinds of things frightened you and excited you at that time about making that kind of decision?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you what frightened me a little bit was just, was I leaving something that may have been financially lucrative to me? And because in higher ed, you don't know, if you're ever going to make up that salary, or if you're ever going to have a high salary. So just not knowing sort of what is the pathway in terms of my own ability to, take care of my family and provide, for the things that I want and need in life. So that was a little frightening. But what excited me, and I maybe go a little bit back to my college days, is I went into college as very, not confident, as I mentioned early on. But my student leadership experience is what really shaped not only my experience at the University of Toledo, but it shaped my desire to go back to higher ed. And much of what I learned as a student leader is carried forward into my career in higher ed. I mean, I was president of the Black Student Union. I was in student senate, the cabinet, so those skills, like, I felt excited that, oh, wow, I can use those skills again in a place that I care about and I can make a difference. So I think that was sort of the excitement and a little bit of nervousness.
Martino, I feel like we've missed the opportunity to hear all about your college days.
Kelsey loves asking. She's trying to get dirt on everybody.
Day. I am. Like, is there a college story, something good that we want to make sure we hear before we leave?
I think I'll tell you, that could probably be a whole other podcast, but I think probably the biggest story is it was really so transformational for me. And because I knew when I was in middle school and, even grade school, well, I went to 1 K through 8, that I had leadership ability, but I just didn't know that, I just had this sort of, or in high school even, I wasn't really demonstrating it because I didn't feel like, who's going to listen to me? Who cares about me? And like college was like a fresh start. Like I could just start over. And I was able to use the skills that I knew I had in a positive way. And I think that set really a whole trajectory. And the last thing I'll say this, I do want to say this really quickly. One of my mentors was the vice president for student affairs at the University of Toledo. He was the first Black vice president in any area. He was the first vice president for student affairs, Dr. Lancelot C.A. Thompson. He's from Jamaica. And he became a lifelong mentor. I didn't know at that time that I wanted to be in the position that he was in, but over time, I kind of knew it. And he just encouraged me till his passing. I mean, he kept getting on me about finishing my dissertation. He would say, "When are you going to get that damn dissertation done, Martino? Come on, get it done." In his Jamaican accent. And when I defended my dissertation, he tried to attend, but he couldn't find the building, and people were not helpful to him because you could find that out, and nobody helped him. So unfortunately, he missed that, but he tried to come. And then when I became vice president at Iowa State, he was in the hospital at the time, but when he came out, we had a phone call. I called my dad, I called my daughters, and then I called Dr. Thompson. And you could hear him crying. We were both crying over the phone. Unfortunately, that was the last conversation we had because a few months later, he passed away, and I was very honored to speak at his services. So I wanted to mention that because he was very a big figure in my whole experience.
Well, that is a great story. He was clearly very proud of you. And actually, I want to say I know that the University of Toledo is proud of you because you, I know I wouldn't mention this about yourself, but I know the university just honored you in the last 30 days or so with an Alumni Achievement Award for your success and your service to the community. And so congratulations. And clearly his pride is true for the whole university. Just a remarkable achievement.
Loren, you know my story, and I wasn't going to mention that, but I'm so honored. Actually, next Friday night, I will be receiving the Gold Tea Award in the building named after him, the Lancelot Thompson Student Union. And I'm actually going to get emotional if I don't stop talking about it, so I better stop.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, we are just so grateful you've spent time with us. We know how busy you are. I know how busy you are, having spent time, of course, in that office and at that university. Your story is both inspiring and humble at the same time. I love University of Michigan, having spent so much time there. My daughter's a graduate. She was a tour guide for admissions, so I appreciate how admissions can change lives and teach skills, and respect all that you've done and are doing for students and for the University of Michigan. And by the way, I hope you get some travel to a national championship game. That's the travel I want you to be able to get to.
I'm ready.
Blue.
I'm ready. Call Coach Harbaugh and tell him to make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We are just unbelievably grateful for your time and quite inspired by your story, Martino.
All right, Loren, are we ready for some extra credit?
Always ready. I've learned to be ready for extra credit. Where are you? You're traveling somewhere.
I am traveling somewhere. I'm actually recording from a hotel room, so that has made me incredibly nervous on how it's going to turn out. But I'm actually in Colorado Springs.
Did you pay for the extra? We'll give you the free internet that's really bad, but pay for the extra because you were nervous about the.
Oh, 100%. Well, this is where your status comes into play. So you can get the extra, right? Yeah. No, it's very important. I was actually here to visit Carlos Garcia and Larry Lee at the University of Colorado Springs. And so that's one thing about, I think, my role and your role, that we get this opportunity to continue to still be on a variety of campuses and in conversation with people about what's happening in their worlds. It was a wonderful day.
Yeah, good. I love that area. Those are great people. And 300 days of sunshine a year in Colorado doesn't help if you have to travel somewhere, right?
And when you can wake up at 5 a.m. and go into the mountains before your day starts, it's pretty good.
Do you find it inspiring? I know we're often there to help others. Do you find it also helping you when you're with other campuses and other people, and in what ways?
100%. It always helps me. I feel selfish in some ways how much I feel inspired when I leave a college campus. I walked in, we were in the student union for a minute, and my parking app wasn't working to pay for parking, all of the things. And I went up to the information desk to chat with the student there to figure it out. And I just love the information desk and the students working there and the experience. And it really takes me back to the start of the student union days and really the meaning behind the work that we do.
Yeah, I just returned from Boise State University, also in the West. Beautiful, beautiful part of the country. I had never been to Boise, and I had the honor of attending as part of my 3 days on campus. It just coincided, but I was invited to attend the kickoff breakfast for the Division of Student Affairs and Enrollment Management. And Dr. Jeremiah Shin is the vice president there for SAEM. And it was really just such an honor because that's the moment, as you know, where culture and tone are affirmed or set. New people are welcomed. Accomplishments are lauded. Challenges for the year are set out. They've already been through move-in, so that's really wonderful. It was just such an honor. And Jeremiah gave a speech, if you will, but he's so effective at it on stage, and he had some messages that were so imageable. But I asked you about if it helps you because it has really resonated with me. He had three big themes and messages. One of which, though, was make it simple. And it has so many applications. He was talking about, make it simple for students, make it simple for each other. I mean, it's so much more fun to work when we can actually help each other and make it simple. And so, I felt like I was the new employee at Boise State, getting the speech from the vice president. It was just great.
You just got your new ID card and you're ready to go.
Yeah. It was
amazing.
Fantastic. It was just so great.
Well, here's to always staying connected with the college experience. Until next time.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Inscoe, with your hosts Kelsey Harmon-Finn and Loren Rullman.